Hey y'all, this is Brown at I Have Brown, and tonight we are going to be talking about The Hidden on DVD. The Hidden came out in 1987, and it was the third film to be directed by Jack Sholder. And Sholder and the production company which put this movie out, New Line Cinema, had a rather interesting working relationship together. The first film that Sholder made was in 1982, and it was called Alone in the Dark, and it was a slasher film. And it was also the very first movie that came out of New Line Cinema as a production company. So the fact that he was in on the ground floor as far as New Line Cinema, getting its start, I mean, it's a rather interesting note in film history, I guess you could say, or for film buffs. But Alone in the Dark was not a box office success necessarily, but it was a hit amongst the horror crowd. And if you like your slasher films with a bit more intelligence than, say, the Friday the 13th movies, it's worth checking out. And as far as cinematic debuts go, Sholder did rather well for himself. Not quite a good movie, but a decent one for sure. And then in 1985, Jack Sholder did his second film and also his second collaboration with New Line Cinema with Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. And this was the first sequel to Wes Craven's classic horror film, Nightmare on Elm Street, which introduced the world Freddy Krueger. And so Nightmare on Elm Street 2 was a rather divisive entry for fans of the Nightmare franchise. And having seen the movie, I could definitely see why it's as divisive as it is. But I would say that it's an interesting movie. There's too much good to keep it from being bad, but there's too much bad to keep it from being straight up good either. So you make it that way you will. But that being said, the movie was a success financially, and on a $3 million budget, grossed somewhere around $30 million. So considering this was 1985, that was pretty good. And so New Line Cinema, they knew that they could work with Jack Sholder, and he could probably turn out a hit for them. And so in 1987, they reteamed for their third collaboration, The Hidden. And this was the collaboration that I think, for a time put Jack Sholder on the map, because, it's a movie that almost universally is regarded as good. And even people who don't like the science fiction genre, they tend to say that this was a good movie. And I think part of that could be because the science fiction angle is somewhat downplayed, even though it is a part of the story. Like there's more focus given to, say, the human drama and the action scenes. And also, there's a rather recognizable cast amongst the supporting characters. And odds are, if you've watched TV shows from the 80s or 90s or movies from the 80s or 90s, you're going to see a lot of familiar faces in this movie. So, and you also have two very compelling lead performances from Michael Nouri and MacLachlan in this movie. And so, let's go ahead and get into it. So the movie takes place in Los Angeles, and it's in the midst of this, crime wave, that has Detective Tom Beck rather baffled, because what's happening is ordinary law-abiding citizens are going on these violent killing sprees or crime sprees, wherein, they usually steal, exotic sports cars, or they just go around randomly killing people with a grin on their faces, right? And it's something that makes no sense, and it keeps on popping up. And so what ends up happening is Beck ends up being paired with an FBI agent named Lloyd Gallagher. And Gallagher had asked specifically to work with Beck because Beck, it turns out, was working on a case of a perpetrator named Jack DeVries. And it turns out, Lloyd Gallagher was going after the same guy. But after this one particularly violent, car chase, which the movie opens with, DeVries is, put in the hospital and is not expected to last a night. And, Gallagher is rather insistent about, getting to the, hospital, prior to him dying. And so, as it turns out, though, he has very good reason to be insistent about this, because as he ends up confiding in Beck later on, the perpetrator behind all this is a gruesome alien parasite that goes from body to body, once its current host body is too damaged to go any further. And this particular parasite is something that he's been pursuing for some time, because it turns out he himself is an alien. And amongst other things, this alien criminal that it's going after, this parasitic creature he's going after, amongst other things, had killed his partner. And so there's a bit of a personal stake in this for Gallagher. And of course, Beck, he's like, spaceman, really? And is thinking that Gallagher's full of what. And while he is willing to admit that this is a rather strange series of crimes, he's not quite ready to believe in, say, extraterrestrials and all that. But when he's soon confronted with the evidence face to face, he kind of has to change his tune and ends up working with Gallagher to stop this creature. So that was the basic gist of the movie right there. But all in all, though, I think that they did a really good job with, say, giving us an action movie that has a rather compelling human drama with the lead characters, but also a rather unique sci-fi angle, because as Roger Ebert and several other critics have said, this is like Terminator meets Invasion of the Body Snatchers, because when this puppeteer parasite goes from one body to another, this body under its control can take so much damage. Like it can be shot repeatedly and just keep on going like it's no big deal, right? And then, of course, with the police procedural, element thrown in, you have something that it's very relatable for a mainstream audience, because you got your crime dramas, you got your cop shows and what have you. This is the 80s, and so you had stuff like, Miami Vice and Hill Street Blues. So, police procedurals were, very much reliable for mainstream entertainment. And so I liked how they took that and then they threw this little sci-fi angle into it. And for those of you who are, saying I'm spoiling, hopefully there won't be too many who say I'm spoiling things by, saying that, Gallagher's an alien himself. It's something that a lot of people have already mentioned and covered. And you watch the movie, and even if you've not read any reviews on it, you can kind of put two and two together that this guy's not from around here. And so it's really interesting, seeing how you have the human cop, played by Michael Nouri, he plays Tom Beck. He's probably, the most relatable guy in the movie in a way, as far as lead characters go, in a sense that, we understand his, reactions to the situation. And we also identify with, say, how he interacts with, those around him. Like, he has a really good camaraderie with, his fellow, police officers and the other detectives he works with. And he's really diligent when it comes to his job, and he cares about what he's doing. And when it comes to, say, going after the bad guy, it's very understandable that he wants to do whatever it takes to put the bad guy down, especially if it's one of these criminals that have gone these bizarre crime sprees wherein multiple people have been murdered, just for no reason whatsoever other than a sick thrill. And it's like, we understand his determination to catch the bad guy and, if need be, put him down permanently, or at least we understand the desire. But at the same time, he tries his best to be professional about things, and for the most part is professional. And so we also get to see like a warmer side to his character, in a sense that we see him at home with his family and what have you, and we get the portrayal of a good family man, who does his best to leave it all at the door. And his wife and his daughter, they give him further incentive to come home in one piece, and also to put as many bad guys as he can, to protect, innocent people like his wife and kid. And so, Michael Nouri, I think, did a really good job with the part, because up to this point, the other thing that most people remembered him from was from the movie Flashdance, where he was the love interest of the main character. And I haven't seen Flashdance, but I do remember he was in that. So, but on the other hand, when The Hidden came out, he definitely had another, hit on, his resume for sure. So people were like, hey, that's a dude from The Hidden, that kind of thing. But I also liked how he had a sort of, cynical sense of humor. His character did, and it makes sense because, he's been working, homicide, as a detective for several years, and in order to cope with all that, you kind of have to have a cynical sense of humor. And, I liked his interplay with his fellow police officers, and, how it's like there's definitely a, camaraderie and chemistry there. And when it comes to Lloyd Gallagher, I think MacLachlan just knocked it out of the park because he's basically portraying an alien portraying a human, or an alien pretending to be human. And Roger Ebert, one of the things he said in his review was, he compared it to Jeff Bridges' portrayal as an alien pretending to be human or in control of a human body, from the movie Starman. And it's a rather interesting comparison, because on the surface, Lloyd Gallagher is a human. It is a human body that he's using, but he's not in control. It's actually an alien, a law enforcement officer, for lack of a better term, in the body of, a human, and has, basically, used this body for the purposes of hunting down this criminal that like him, also uses other people's bodies to get around. And so, when you see him on screen, he has a very ethereal, aura to him, and there's nothing malevolent necessarily, but at the same time, there's something off where you're like, even if you're not, even if you don't put two and two together right away, you can definitely tell that, yeah, this guy's not from around here, because socially speaking, he's very awkward, but at the same time, we do see that he's not a bad person, though. We see that he's someone who cares about life and, wants to preserve it and protect the innocent. And I liked, his, strange, friendship that he has with Beck, because, his Beck's, sense of humor and his sense of humor, they sort of, rub off on one another. And like, there's a point where they're going to a crime scene, and Gallagher says, "Hey, we'll take my car," and lo and behold, it's a Porsche. And Beck's like, how much? Do you mind me asking you how much it is? And he's like, nope. How much? I don't know. So what'd you do? Steal it? Yep. So he's like, okay. And so it's interesting because he likes Porsches, but the evil alien likes Ferraris, and so both the evil alien and the good alien, they like fast cars, they like exotic cars, and so there's a similarity in that regard. But whereas the evil aliens, basically just, if he sees something he likes or wants, he just, takes it regardless of the consequences. If someone gets in his way, he kills it. So that's where, the similarities end, though, in the sense that, this alien's a monster, the bad guy is, whereas, the good guy, is definitely someone who's on the side of law and order. They just happen to both like fast cars. And so there's similarities there in some ways, and also just the fact that they're both puppeteer, parasites or aliens, in the sense that, both, MacLachlan, and the actors portraying, the people under the evil alien's control, it's like there's interesting parallels between them, in the sense like they'll be looking at a mirror or something and just, contemplating, their bodies, and, I guess you could say the finite nature of things. But with MacLachlan, though, we definitely feel that a lot more, because it's just there's more of a human connection with his character, which is ironic because he's playing an alien, who's controlling a human body, and so even though there's this otherworldly nature to his character, there's a very human element to him as well. And there's a nice little scene where he's over at Beck's house, having dinner with him and his wife, and we find out that he can't hold his liquor. Like, he only has a little bit of one beer, and he's just, ugh. But we get a little more exposition in regards to his character, and we get a little more insight into his motivation as to why he's so determined to go after this criminal. And it's not just the criminal having killed his partner. There's a lot more to it than that, and when you find out, you're kind of like, oh. And the way MacLachlan plays it, it's interesting because he's playing someone who's drunk, but at the same time he's opening up, and there's a sense of vulnerability about it all. And even Beck's kind of taken aback by it, and so is his wife. But speaking of Beck's wife, she was played by a woman named Catherine Cannon, and I don't think I've seen her in anything else, but I know she was on a TV show called Father Murphy, so some of y'all might know what that is. But yeah, I really liked her character, because she played Beck's wife as someone who was very compassionate, and she was a good mother, to their daughter. And, basically, you understood why Beck loved her. She was a very warm presence, and basically, she was in his corner, the whole way through, regardless of, how bad his day was or something like that. But I also liked how compassionate she was with, the character of, Lloyd Gallagher, because, like Beck and anyone else around, him, she could sense that there's something off about the guy, but not in a sense of, say, being malevolent. Just that, hey, this guy's not from around here, and this is before Beck, realizes that this guy's an alien, right? But Catherine Cannon, though, I liked how she, portrayed, the part of, Beck's wife, because, you just saw that she was a very compassionate person, even, when, say, playing host to a rather strange FBI agent. So, there are also some other, good actors here, but I gotta say, though, that the actors that we see portraying, the victims of the alien parasite, I like how, even though, like, they're different actors, playing different people, there's a consistency in, say, physical mannerisms from person to person, because this is supposed to be one alien controlling a different body each time. But just because the body's different, that doesn't mean the physical mannerisms that this alien has are going to be different from body to body. And I like that consistency, though. But I mean, like, you have Chris Mulkey playing the first victim we see, or the first person being controlled under this parasite, and then we have William Boyett who plays Jonathan Miller, the guy that takes up a good amount of time when it comes to, say, people that we see being controlled by the parasite. And the funny thing with him is that he's a guy who's sort of hefty, right? And probably his 50s or 60s at the time, but we see him in control, his character being controlled by the alien parasite, and there's like a very dark sense of humor, in the sense that, like, at one point he goes to a car dealership and steals a Ferrari, and the way he does it is just hilarious, because you look at him, like, sort of middle-aged man, sort of hefty, and you see him, do what he does at the dealership, and there's just something that you don't see something like that happening every day with people that look like him. It's like you're thinking that this would be like the actions of a younger man or something like that, but this guy is just nope. He just walks in, and you'll see the movie if you watch the movie, right? But it's just something very comical about that. And but then I guess the scene stealer, though, was Claudia Christian, because she plays a stripper named Brenda who gets taken over by the parasite. and you could tell she was having fun with it, because it's like the other two actors, there's a sense of consistency in terms of, say, physical mannerisms, except this time the host body is a woman, and so the alien's sort of feeling its new body, right? And so you see Claudia Christian sort of cleavage, it's that kind of thing, which was kind of funny because you find out in the commentary that to make her look more buxom, they did something like artificial stuff, like for the scenes, like where you see her cleavage and what have you. So to make Claudia Christian look more buxom in certain scenes, but yeah, so it was kind of funny, like when you're seeing the alien going, ooh, but mind you, it's an alien in a woman's body, so I've never done that before, right? But I also liked how we kind of get a glimpse of her character before, she's possessed. And we get, from what we see, it's like, if you know people in, professions like that, it's like you see, like on stage, they're all happy and everything, having a good time, make sure the audience has a good time. But then it's like, you see them in their dressing room and they're kind of worn down and broken or just tired, right? And we kind of get a glimpse of that with, Brenda's character, as the way Claudia Christian plays her. But, and so when she gets possessed, just that little glimpse of, harsh reality, it kind of makes things a little more tragic for her character, as briefly as we see her. But then when she's possessed, the rest of the time, though, you can tell like Claudia Christian's just having a field day with it. But it's something, funny about how, you have a stripper getting into a shootout with the two lead, characters, and it's a rather brutal shootout too. And at one point, as Beck ends up, grilling, Gallagher on later on in the movie, he's all like, I want to know why it takes 15 shots to bring down some zoned out stripper. And of course, this is shortly before Gallagher ends up telling him what's really going on, right? But it's like you see this on screen, you're like, holy crap. And the way Claudia Christian, handles herself in these action scenes is actually pretty cool because, she handles herself well, using a gun and everything, but she has like sort of a robotic physicality to her, like, the other, puppeteer, victims had, So I liked seeing that. But you also got a couple of other familiar faces here. You had, Edo Ross, who, if you've seen Lethal Weapon, you might recognize him from that, but he was the bad guy in the Schwarzenegger movie Red Heat. But it was cool seeing him here as a good guy. He plays a detective named Willis, and he's one of the people that works with Beck, and you find out he's one of Beck's best friends too. And so it's cool seeing him as a good guy. And you also have, Richard Brooks as a detective named Sanchez. And, Richard Brooks, I remember him from, the earlier seasons of Law and Order. So when I saw this movie, I was like, hey, Law and Order, that kind of thing. But he was a very jovial personality, and, definitely adds to the camaraderie of the main crew and what have you. But one of the things I liked about those two actors in particular is that, we kind of see them, like initially they're sort of put off by Lloyd Gallagher's presence, in the sense that he's FBI and they're detectives. There's jurisdictional friction, right? But also there's sort of this guy's strange, right? But then later on, though, as he and Beck become friends, they kind of see that and they're kind of like, okay, Gallagher's okay, and they sort of warm up to him just a little bit. I liked seeing that. So yeah, it's like you have some good. You have two good lead actors playing the main roles, and then you have a good supporting cast playing the rest of the characters, and everyone just does a really good job. But also I liked how when it comes to say the action scenes, this was like in the 80s, so CGI, it wasn't happening, right? This was all old school practical, stunts and special effects and everything. So, the car chases, all what you see on screen, right? Like real cars, being, being hit, real cars being blown up, and things like that. And yes, there was a Ferrari or two that got blown up, according to the commentary. So there you go, right? But yeah, the chase scenes, though, the car chase scenes are amazing. Like very kinetic, very fast paced. The shootouts are very well done too. And one of the things I like about the shootouts is that, usually in action movies, when the policemen or like police officers are shooting at the bad guys, unless they're the main characters, they can't hit the broadside of a barn. But much like the Terminator, you have a police force that is depicted as competent, but unfortunately, up against something that they're wholly unprepared for, that's out of this world, literally. And so it's like you have these action scenes where you have multiple police officers shooting at the bad guy, or whichever form the alien parasite's using, right? But this parasite can use the human body to just walk through all this, and so it could be hit 17, 18 times and still keep on going. And so I liked seeing that the police department was depicted with a form of competence, like they weren't just idiots that couldn't hit the broadside of the barn unless they're the main character. So I liked seeing that definitely enhanced the action scenes. And there's a neat little bit where in the shootout that Beck and Gallagher get in with Brenda, the possessed stripper, they end up in a mannequin a mannequin store, and I like the symbolism of it, and they even mentioned it on the commentary. But you got this building full of literally hollowed people, right? And then you have three real people amongst all these fake people, of course. But then you have two of those real people in turn being aliens in the possession of human bodies, right? So it's like, who's the real person? And I like that sort of, imagery there. And there was even a bit of suspense in that scene. But I will say, though, that this is a good movie, hands down, right? And before I get into the nitpicks I had, I should mention that the music by Michael Convertino, very well done. When it comes to like the action scenes, it's very intense, very suspenseful. When it comes to say like the quiet scenes, like say the drama scenes and what have you, very subdued and full of pathos. Very good balance. But okay, so to get to the nitpicks, okay, so we already know going in that the bad guy is an alien, right? But I think it would have helped things if we had gotten a reveal a little bit later in the movie, because we first find out on screen that it's a parasite shortly after the first car chase, and that opens the movie. And it's good special effects and everything, because it's like you see this worm like creature come out of this one dude's mouth, the one who was initially its host body, and into the mouth and and body of its next victim. And it's a pretty gruesome scene, but and it's good special effects. But I just feel like if they had pushed that back, like that revelation a little bit later in the movie, I think it would have done better for suspense. Like say if Beck and Gallagher and a couple of the other police officers, had gotten to the hospital, and they see, that one perp, dead, and then, they're being told that, someone else in the same room just got up and left that shouldn't be able to do that because they're going through, a bypass surgery. I mean, it would have been interesting if, we had gotten something like that, as opposed to say, just seeing the alien right then and there, because then it's like, what the hell is going on here? Because you got Gallagher telling Beck, okay, we need to go after this person. Okay, now we need to go after this person. And he keeps on, changing the targets, right? And so Beck's like, what the hell's going on? What is all this? When's it going to end, And so it's like we'd have like a sense of, I guess, Beck's mounting confusion and frustration with the situation, and Gallagher, it's like we know he's hiding something, but we don't know what just yet. And so then, when we would have that moment where we actually find out, yeah, it's an alien, it would have been like, okay, we know something's going on, but there'd be a sense of suspense that was built up. And then it's like, oh my God, that's what's going on here. That's what we're up against, And so then when, Lloyd ends up letting Beck in on it, be like, okay, everything, makes sense now. Not to say it didn't make sense the way it was shot. It just, I feel like they could have, had a stronger sense of suspense had they pushed it back further in the movie as far as the revelation of us seeing the alien physically coming out of someone. Also, one other thing is that at the climax of the movie, it's a very good action scene, and there's a rather poignant, idea of this one particular character kind of going on a suicide run, and it's definitely something that is memorable. But what ends up happening is there's like a plot development of how sometimes like in a sci-fi story or movie, there's like a last act wherein someone's about to be assassinated and the main character has to save that person, or sometimes the main character has to kill that person in order to, save, the future or save the planet or something like that. And I feel like the movie up until this point at the climax was doing a very good job of breaking expectations, because it was a buddy cop movie, but at the same time there was a lot of stuff that you didn't see in most buddy cop movies at this point in time. But when it came to this part of the movie, the climax, where there's that plot development of someone of one of the characters going on this suicide run to take out this one particular character. It's like an assassination plot that, I mean, we understand how it happens and everything, but it just feels like something from another movie, I think. And it's not that it's bad. It's very well done, very well shot. It just, from a plot standpoint, that's the only part I could think of that, whereas the rest of the movie was basically breaking expectations, with what we thought we were going to get with, say a buddy cop movie, but we end up getting this well done, sci-fi angle thrown in, which made things even more, intriguing. We get this climax that from a plot standpoint, it really does feel like something from another book or movie, though. So I'm not saying that it brings things down or anything. It's just that's the only part I could think of where I'm like, yeah, I've seen this before. I mean, but it still looks cool though. So all in all, though, this was a good movie. I'm going to go ahead and give The Hidden 4 out of 5 stars. And so as far as special features go, you got your widescreen and full screen, versions of the movie. I usually do widescreen myself, but you have a very good commentary track with the director Jack Sholder and a guy named Tim Hunter, and I'm pretty sure Tim Hunter has worked with other people on commentary tracks before. I forgot exactly what he does. I mean, aside from that, but hearing him and Jack Sholder talk about this movie, we get a lot of inside. We got some inside perspective as far as how the movie was made. We get a little bit, a bit about how the movie was originally going to be. In fact, the person who wrote the screenplay actually wrote under another name because he didn't like how the studio was changing some of his stuff, and so it's like Jack and a few other people came in and changed some stuff around to make things a little more streamlined, and I think it actually worked out rather well. But you also find out that unfortunately, while he doesn't go into detail, you do find out that Jack Sholder and actor Michael Nouri kind of butt heads, on a few things. And to his credit, Jack Sholder didn't go all gossipy and say, "Oh, you did this and this and this." He just said, "Hey, we didn't get along exactly, but he did do a good job in this movie." So, I mean, he was a gentleman about it. And so, yeah, and also, I liked how they were confirming some stuff about Lloyd Gallagher's character. Like, there's a certain moment where you get a visual confirmation that, yeah, this guy's from outer space, and it's mainly in the scene where he's at the Beck's house, the Beck's family house, and I'm sorry, he's at the Beck family house after he's been invited to dinner, and he's looking around, and there's a shot where he's looking at this telescope, and he just sort of looks at it and sort of smiles knowingly because it's pointed out to where it's looking out at the stars, right? And he just gets this little smile on his face, and Jack Sholder was talking with Tim Hunter. It's like, yeah, we were just kind of wanting to throw in how basically have a visual moment that let the audience know that this guy's from out there. And so I like that, but you find out a bunch of stuff about how the movie was made, and like he's very specific about how certain shots were set up and things like that, and some funny stories too. So it's a good commentary track, it really is. And you also have some this bit of where they show some special effects, like what they were going to have at the climax, and I'll just say that had they gone with what they were originally going to show with this test footage, it wouldn't have looked good at all. So I'm glad they went with what they ultimately did on the actual movie. But yeah, you also have a theatrical trailer and some cast and crew filmography. So not busting full of, not overwhelming with special features or anything like that, but it's got just enough to where it's like, yeah, you get your money's worth here. So yeah, that's The Hidden. 4 out of 5 stars. Check it out. So y'all got any questions, comments, please drop a line, let me know. If you like what you see here, feel free to like or subscribe. So y'all take care, have a good night, bye.